I think it was the perfect storm because on one end I let the session end and then I contested him. So if there is a frigging ice giant on this ledge, how is it possible that I fall off the ledge itself? It needs to be at least a few meters wide, or how is it going to stand there?
How
And
far did I
that's
actually fall? Are you
yeah,
saying that I
yeah.
literally broad jumped across to get off the
Yeah,
mountain?
something
Right.
like that.
Okay.
And he said he didn't think about that. But the most relevant thing, I think, regarding, well, it was just a bad situation, and we make fun of that to this day. But I think the most relevant thing that I remember regarding competence is that there was a description of a situation that was clearly fictionally something that wasn't so dangerous for a character like mine, and I had the competence to do that rather easily. But when the dice came to a 4 or 5, I don't remember what was the score, it felt like a failure to the DM. And in the end, it ended up being a failure for me too. And all that stuff, the competence, the situation, all the details, the numerical details we had in place didn't prevail on this aspect, on the idea that I had rolled poorly and so I had to fail somehow. And I think this idea that you roll poorly and so you have to pay some sort of price has a very long heritage,
I
even
agree.
in,
Doesn't it also combine with the glee and sense of accomplishment at rolling well?
yes,
That's
yes,
it's the flip side of that. If you want to congratulate yourself on how the polyhedra fell, as if the role of physics and gravity were somehow, your merit in
yeah,
action, then
yeah,
then
it's,
then it makes sense that a crap roll means you must suffer regardless of all else. But
yeah,
that's an interesting point. I mean, is if we really look at I mean, let's look at systems. I mean, we can all think of
hmm,
several, but let's look at systems with a fairly individualized list of skills per character, and for lack of a better word, a certain amount of creative investment in choosing which spells or skills are good. Um, Even Dungeons and Dragons Fourth Edition, it has a limited skill list, but you choose and you're given some, and you're able to choose others, but you
hmm,
choose which ones you're going to be trained in. Right? You've chosen which ones are important. So your Minotaur Barbarian has different skills that they're good at than that Minotaur Barbarian. And then we have much, much more complicated systems like Undiscovered, for example, right? Where your commitment and interest in the precise percentage per skill is obviously considered a primary point of attention for the player. It's something you're supposed to care about a lot, as from the beginning onwards. So there's lots of games like that. I mean, there are a lot of games with pretty, pretty detailed and very elective skill lists. So what does it mean to have a certain percentage at something and to fail it? And remember, we're not talking statistically across 25 attempts so that your competence will show up in the distribution across all those attempts. So we say, well, you're 75% with a sword. And if we look across the last 100 times you hit somebody, we can see that you are 75% with a sword and better than that person with 25%. But what about right now? Right now, in this situation, when you fail and the person with 25% hits, how do we narrate those things? We can narrate them as incompetence, which doesn't really seem to work. We can narrate them as bad luck. They got lucky, you didn't. We can even narrate something more fanciful, that you wove a dazzling pattern with your sword, and that justifies the less competent person hitting because the foe was distracted. You see, you can get more elaborate in your narration, right, about these things,
Yeah.
to the point where the group will or won't accept it, even. So, in some ways, though, let's back up and say, well, what's the point of failing at all? What's the point of the failed outcome at all? Why do we Go ahead, Helma.
It makes things interesting. I mean, when you guys went back 30 years or something and said that there were basically no rules, there was no failure, my first thought was, how would that bring me back to the table? Right. I mean, a story with no complications?
Well, there were, but they were only in those very narrow things, like whether you broke the door down or whether you dropped dead in your tracks or whether you climbed the wall or not, stuff like that.
Yeah, but
but they were very narrow. They were extremely narrow range. Everything else was just open. I don't know.
That seems a little bit hollow. Well, I mean, the fun with failure. That sounds horrible. But I mean, the thing I think makes it nearly better than succeeding and makes it easier for me if I get the chance to narrate it than succeeding is that it without any doubt makes everything more interesting in the moment. And maybe, I mean, thinking of the RuneQuest game we played, it could make things interesting for...
Oops.
Yeah.
We lost her. I see you, Alexandra. I know that you want to talk next. I'll get to you. Yeah, let's let Helma finish. Sorry, Helma, finish that thought.
I mean, what I mean is it can make things increasingly more interesting for a number of sessions. I mean, sometimes in the middle of our RuneQuest games, there was a session where pretty much everybody in the room missed their roles. Cult lore. And I think it took us 2 sessions at least to recover from it.
It did.
And they were the most fun and most interesting thing of the whole. And sometimes I was thinking, if we had succeeded those roles, what would have happened?
Well,
would that have been better? And I'm pretty sure it wouldn't.
I can tell you that in the case of that particular game, I was bringing a particular principle into play that I want to talk about. So don't let me forget it while we listen to and examine what Alexandra was going to say.
Okay. So I remember playing Warhammer and playing D&D, like last edition and 3.5 and third edition. So failing a role was basically like in a fight, especially when we fail a roll, it's a moment when the opposition acts. So if I'm hitting let's say a zombie with an axe and I fail, so it means I miss, right? It doesn't really matter. The most important thing is that it will be that next there will be zombie's turn, and it's got a chance to hit me. So it shows 2 things. Like my lost roll doesn't have to mean anything in the fiction. Like.
Right. It could just be you could even just have a big nothing right there, right?
I mean, D&D says something like that. We are trying to hit each other for a while, and if I don't, it's just it means that the opponent parried. It was good enough in parrying, right? It's what should happen in the fiction, but. If I don't hit the opponent, he's got his turn, its turn, to hit me again. So it's like a lost opportunity.
Right.
Like if I want to open the door and the zombies are coming my way, and it takes me time, it might be that we won't escape and we just have to engage in a fight. So it's lost time. It's showing how the fight goes from like a moment
It's
after
either
the
a
moment.
chase through the door while one person stays behind,
Yes.
or you're all just up against the wall, desperately fighting.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Now, I think that there are lots of times that I dream of those moments. I look forward to those moments. Those are the moments that I will choose to narrate later, to tell people about. There was this time, when, and then Alexandra failed the strength roll to get the door open or something like that. And then the person listening shudders and said, then what? And I say, we all turned, put our shoulders together, put our shields up, and we teamed up against the zombies, right? Even though we had been arguing and about to kill each other in the previous scene, right? And I'm just, as a participant in role playing, I dream of the moments where the failed roll, the previous circumstances in the previous scene, and the immediate tactical consequences. I dream of them all hitting like that. And yet, I can also say and it seems like it's so easy for that to happen if you have characters interacting, if you have an understandable imagined space that were consistent enough, pragmatically consistent enough in our minds with it. If the roles in question really do have the outcome of the consequence on that fight, or as Helma was talking about, the consequences for your understanding of the situation when something appears in front of you. Why the undead wolfish creatures that you fought, and your characters are like, what the hell is going on? Why did they appear out of this portal? What the hell? Right? But the point is that I dream of these, and I've gotten better at encouraging the kind of play so that any role that happens is going to be a convergent moment like that, or many roles are going to be convergent moments like that. But we all have situations where the play just falls flat on its face. Yeah.
So I played Warhammer when I was younger, and lately I had a chance to play it again. So as I remember it, it was like, okay, it's a fight, so I try to hit you, I miss, then you try to hit me, you miss because the chances were like slim. And it was super boring. So like a guy in my group was running a game like One Shot, and I joined because I'm nostalgic. And there was a fight, and those guys who were in the party played like this, like I hit, they hit, I hit, they hit. I remembered most of the rules, or some of the rules. I thought, oh, my character is crappy at fighting, so I ran away. The opponent ran after my character. I tried to hide in my round. He didn't find me. I had a chance to take, draw my weapon. And suddenly the same fight, was interesting. Like by the using the maneuvers in the fight, by using the mechanics, and not just standing there, but by engaging the mechanic to make my chances higher. This makes a big difference.
I think it's important to remember that we are not talking about just pure narration versus mechanics. Many games do have very consequential mechanics so that you know that if you fail the roll, you know what you were trying to do. So narrating the outcome of that is easy and fun. You know, you put everything you had into that special polearm charge. You fail the roll. It actually is fun to say that you end up on the other side of the opponent, you know, and you're like, oh shit, I'm in a slight disadvantage here, you know, and you look at the maneuver and it says -2 defense. And you're like, well, of course I have minus defense. I just ran past the son of a bitch, and now my back is to him. I get it. Of course I'm at -2. That's great, actually, right?